Buckle up, everybody, because in this video, I'm going to play some clips of some unbelievable things that you may have never seen. Some of these clips are going to involve Musab Hassan Yusuf, the son of the founder of Hamas, and in other clips, you'll hear from the Grand Mufti of Egypt, as well as many others, all with translations, and every bit of which has biblical implications. Here we go again. This is going to be a great one. All right, folks, let's get into this. I can tell you right now, we are in for a great video that is going to be immensely eye-opening. Of course, as many of you know, we've been seeing a lot of stuff happening in the Middle East, and much of it is affecting us in this country and all over the world. If you don't believe me, you can stop and look at a local college campus, or you can just see so much of the polarizing discussions that are being had. And one of the things that's really mind-boggling about all of this is all the misinformation that's coming, all of the lies that are being communicated. And then when people gather all this information from all kinds of bad sources, they're coming to some really bad biblical conclusions. And so I am really excited because today I'm going to play some videos that I think are going to be absolutely eye-opening and a little bit jarring, because some of the things you're going to hear are going to be absolutely heavy. Now, first, I am going to play a portion or several portions of an interview that a man named Musab Hassan Yusuf had with Jordan Peterson. Now, I love these Jordan Peterson interviews because Jordan has a great way of getting good information out of people when they speak. And if you don't know who Mr. Yusuf is, he is the son of the founder of Hamas. And of course, he has a very interesting view on what's going on with Hamas. He has a really unique view on the things that are happening in the Middle East. And I can tell you this, it's very eye-opening. Then after we listen to him, I am going to let you listen to one of the founders of Hamas that's actually very close to Mr. Yusuf's father, and it's show you what he actually has to say. Then I'm going to play a video from the Grand Mufti of Egypt, which is also a very eye-opening picture. Then after that, I'm going to show you what the general sentiment of Saudi Arabia is over this Palestinian situation, because I'm going to play a video from one of the most popular commentators in Saudi Arabia alive right now. And by the way, all of these will have translations. And then I'm going to play something that I think is just going to absolutely touch your heart about a person who I hold very dear to me, and it's all going to be great. You're going to love it all. So let's get into it without further ado. We're going to jump in right away with this question. Now, mind you, this is the son of Hamas, and he is being asked right off the bat, hey, listen, can you explain to me what a Palestinian is, or can you explain to me what Hamas is? And then he's going to give an answer that is extraordinary. Okay, so here we go.
Flesh out the landscape for everybody who's watching and listening. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what is Hamas exactly? How would you characterize it?
Before actually we say what is Hamas, we need to ask ourselves, what is Palestine?
Okay.
Because Palestine is non-existential. And it was never a country. It's not ethnic group. It's not a religion. It's not a faith. It's a colonial entity created by the British that lived for about 25 years. And Jews, Arabs, Druze, Christians, Zionists, were called Palestinians before the termination of the British mandate. It was called the British Mandate of Palestine. So the mandate itself had the name Palestine.
By the way, I think it's a very important thing to point out here that the original name of Palestinian was a name that was actually given to Jews, okay? It was given to Jews by an early Roman leader while Rome was still intact. And the idea behind it was he had such a deep-rooted hatred for the Jews that were living in that land that he chose to refer to them as Palestina, which basically is where we get the word Palestinian from. And the idea behind him calling them Palestina is the sort of the thought process that he would be mocking those Jews by referring to them using the name of their sworn enemies in ancient days, which would be the Philistines. So the term Palestine or Palestinian came from the word Philistine, which of course was given as a name to mock the Jews. So the first Palestinians in the land were during the time of early Rome or later Rome, and they were actually Jews. So if anybody wants to ask the Palestinians who were in the land first, you can always say Palestinians were in the land first. They were Jews, believe it or not. As crazy as that sounds, but that's exactly what he's talking about here. So we'll go on.
Now,
Right, and this is all taking place after World War I, when the
after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire.
right. So the empire collapses. There's questions about how the political boundaries should be drawn. The British establish
Yeah.
this state known as Palestine. And so what should people think about that exactly? Like, what do you think people should think about the fact that the British were involved? I mean, they won World War I and the Ottoman Empire collapsed. So there was some mopping up to do. And often those things are done in a hurry and with less than optimal information, let's say.
Yes.
Okay, before he answers this question, let me play for you a video that was made by a young IDF soldier that speaks very directly to the issue of colonization and British colonization. And it is a very factual video. It's literally about a minute, but it's really, really good and it's insightful. So I'm going to play this for you because I think it's a really clear way of describing everything that these two men are talking about right now. And hopefully this will be very useful for you and it'll be a great learning tool. So let me play this video for you. It's a great video that an IDF soldier made, I think on like TikTok or something. I came across it recently and I absolutely love it. So let me go ahead and play that for you.
Free Palestine, land back, that's it.
How come it's always land back and decolonization until it comes to Jews? The reestablishment of the modern state of Israel is quite literally the most successful example of decolonization in history. The Jewish people, also known as the Nation of Israel, are the indigenous people of this land. This land is where we come from Israel and Judah, 2 of 5 different Canaanite kingdoms that existed in this land. The Jewish people are the only Canaanite nation that survived. We have maintained the indigenous language of this land, Hebrew, for thousands of years. We managed to revive it as a spoken language after it was almost eradicated by colonization. Everywhere you go in this land, you find Jewish artifacts, from mosaics to lamps, coins with Hebrew writings. Before the Romans renamed it Palestine as an act of colonialism, we lived here. The Dome of the Rock, which was built by the Arabs when they conquered this land, was built on top of the Jewish temple. We have Palestinian villages that are built on Jewish burial sites. Scream land back all you want, but keep the same energy for Jews.
So there you have it. I mean, he gives a great description of what real decolonization is and what happened with Britain. And I think it would serve us all well if we spent some time learning the real history about what happened, because there's a lot of people rewriting history and telling the lies. So keeping that in mind, let's listen to Mr. Yusuf's response.
Well, the Ottoman Empire continued for about 400 years. During that time, they ethnically cleansed the Jewish people from their land, which explains why the Jewish people were all over the place. After World War I and all the atrocities and the persecution of the Jewish people, they felt the need to seek a refuge, and the homeland was the best option for the Jewish people. Now, this led to clashes between the colonizer, which was the British Empire, and the Jewish people. The Jewish people fought for their independence and they shed blood in the process. Also, the Arabs did the same. In 1948, when the United Nations divided the land, given the opportunity to the Jews and the Arabs to build and establish their own states, the Jews declared their independence, but the Arabs declared war against the Jews. And I think this is a very important point to understand. There was no such a thing as Palestine. And when we talk about the British mandate of Palestine, it was never a state. It was just a transitional period from the collapse of the Ottoman Empire to the termination of the British mandate. And that was less than 28 years.
So that termination was in 1948.
In 1947.
7.
Okay, so the next question that is going to be asked, which I think is really interesting, relates to the idea of why is there no two-state solution? Like why is it that a two-state solution in essence is not enough, right? So or why can't there be a two-state solution? I think that's probably the better way of phrasing it. So listen to what he says about that. This is very interesting.
From Muslim point of view, and this is where it gets tricky. This is where nobody wants to talk about the ideological religious dimension of this war. From Islamic point of view, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the surrounding areas does not define boundary. The surrounding areas could be 100 miles, could be 500 miles. Is an Islamic trust that no Muslim leader has the authority to give it away to the non-Muslims. So when the Jewish people return to their homeland, the Muslims outraged.
Which, by the way, I should note this. This is a sentiment that is changing, especially in Saudi Arabia. There is a growing view, and I'm going to play a video of this, of people in Saudi Arabia that say that this area that Hassan Yusuf is bringing up is actually the sacred ground of the Jews and belongs to them to worship and to set up their temple. There's a growing population of people in Saudi Arabia, very popular people in Saudi Arabia that are saying this, including members of the royal family who are not coming out publicly and saying it, but are openly supporting people in pop culture that are beginning to believe this. So they're not showing this. See where my finger is, where that mosque is right there. They're not showing that as important anymore. And Al-Aqsa Mosque, which this one where this finger is more regarded as the more popular or more holy mosque or sacred mosque. But even then, there's a lot of weaning sort of thoughts that go into this. And I think it's really important that we understand that. They're very significant issues here, okay? So it's really, really, really important to note that.
And that's the most fundamental reason and motive for the Arabs and Muslims to fight against Israel, because they consider that territory as an Islamic land.
And I'll say this, when he says they're fighting against Israel, he's talking about the land dispute. But I think it's also important to note the Quran actually tells them to fight the Jews, okay? Like, this is really important. Jews are as you're going to hear the Grand Mufti of Egypt, or the former Grand Mufti of Egypt, telling you that the life of a Jew isn't even worth the wing of a mosquito. I mean, you're going to hear him say that, okay? So there's a deeply rooted hatred for Jews, and it has nothing to do with the land dispute, okay? In this particular context, he's bringing up the land dispute. But it's pretty amazing when you think about where all of this is going. Okay, so a lot of great stuff he's already talking about. Listen to what he says about Yasser Arafat, who was the original leader of the PLO at the time. They were called the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, eventually became the Palestinian Authority, who right now is under the leadership of Mahmoud Abbas. He's another really interesting piece of work. But listen to what is said here, because this becomes a remarkable part of the conversation. Listen to what he says.
What's the definition of Intifada?
Chaos. People call it uprising, but the very definition, not only of Intifada, of Palestine, very similar definitions. It's chaos, it's disorder, it's anti-establishment.
How does it arise?
Well, simply Yasser Arafat sitting in Tunisia. This is supposed to be the father of the Palestinian revolution.
The same Yasser Arafat who died with like $4 billion. That
a lot
Yasser
more.
Arafat?
A lot more. Yasser Arafat was an Egyptian con artist. He was born in Egypt with an Egyptian accent. It was so obvious.
Yeah, he's right. By the way, when Yasser Arafat speaks in Arabic, it's very obvious that he's born in Egypt. I mean, it's not even a question. And a lot of people believe he was planted there by the Russians, and there's a lot to be said about that. And what he even says about how Yasser Arafat dies is pretty amazing. There's just a lot of insight that I don't think he's ever shared before, but it really goes into some very interesting stuff here. But look what he goes to say.
Know that he's Egyptian, but everybody was in denial that he's Palestinian, and he's the father of the Palestinian Revolution. After they were kicked out of Jordan, of Lebanon, and they end up in Tunisia, some 2,000 miles away, they came up with the idea to engineer the Intifada. They wanted trouble, but from within. They knew that this could be a lot more effective than trying to destroy Israel from outside. And they sent children to die. This has been their mechanism, their strategy.
And who's they?
When I say they, all those who are complicit in this continuous crime, all those who sacrifice children for power and for money. It's a fundamental part of that culture. We have to understand this. First was the ideological dimension that I told you about. Then sacrificing children is not something that makes them feel guilty. It's acceptable in that culture. So now, as a student, masked men used to come, and we were just 5th and 6th grade. We were very young. And they would force all students to evacuate the school. They paralyzed the educational system. They paralyzed economy, transportation, and they wanted complete chaos. And until today, I ask myself, if you were fighting against Israel, why would you stop the education and the economy and all other aspects of the Arab life in the West Bank? This is what Intifada means. So instead of going to school, we stayed at home for the first 2 or 3 years of the first Palestinian Intifada. We did not go to school. Now, instead, many of the children got engaged in stone throwing, and this became our game. I was part of that game. And many of my friends got shot in the process, throwing stones at the IDF or what we used to call them settlers, just clashing. Of course, many civilians got hurt in the process.
And we should note this because it's like really interesting. The stone throwing that he's talking about and a lot of this sort of violent activity is something that was part of the brainwashing that was going on with these kids. You remove them from education, you remove them from mechanisms of discipline, you remove them from this picture, and you get them all to universally view what they're doing with throwing rocks and interfering and taking lives and even homicide bombings. All of those things, they all relate to the brainwashing that they were doing with these kids. So they're grooming these kids into a very violent way of thinking. And that's kind of what we're dealing with here. It's really important that we note this. And it's interesting because he will spend a little bit of time talking about the globalization of Intifada and why it is the way it is. Matter of fact, let me play that for you. Listen to what he says here for just a second, and then I want to skip on to something very astute that Jordan Peterson says regarding this issue and how Mossab actually very, very quickly affirms his view on the issue. But listen to this here with respect to the globalization of, or globalized Intifada. Listen.
Or the Palestinian cause is the children. During the first Palestinian Intifada, when the world saw a child in the face of a modern army, that was outrageous, and everybody sympathized with the cause.
So how did the leaders of the Intifada benefit personally from putting children on the front line? What's the money pipeline precisely? I mean, Arafat ended up with an absolute bloody fortune, like an insane fortune, and I know the same thing is happening, but how exactly is that monetized? It's the suffering of children produces an influx of foreign aid that's then pocketed, essentially?
Yes, because on one hand, they delegitimize Israel. Israel become a child killer.
Right.
Then there is no one in the world that does not sympathize with children dying.
Right.
So there is no more destructive or powerful weapon in the hands of a corrupt revolution that don't want to fight. They don't have the courage to actually fight in combat, but they prefer that their children would die on their behalf. In the meantime, delegitimize Israel and globalize their cause.
So does that make sense? This is how Intifada is being globalized, is because they're sacrificing children. And look, I think this is interesting because we talked about the biblical implications of all of this. I hope you can see Satan's tactic, right? Satan will always destroy the lives of innocent children in order to further accomplish his purposes in manipulating the hearts and the minds and the lives of other people. He does this with abortion. He does this with what's going on in the border south of us here in the United States of America. He's doing this right now with what's going on in Gaza. He's using the children being effective as a tool to create a condition in their minds and in their hearts where they are, in essence, as crazy as it sounds, where they're like, they're approaching things differently, right? The way they look at things is very different because their emotions keep them from seeing the facts, and they're not able to discern the real con that's happening, right? And I think that's the part about this. It's just like really, really amazing, okay? And as a matter of fact, later on in this video, I'll show you where he talks about the fact that he was raped. He actually brings this up, and he'll actually say this. As a matter of fact, it's eye-opening to see how deeply this can affect people, right? So let's skip forward, and because Jordan Peterson makes an observation about what's really happening here that I think is quite astute and worth us listening to, and then listen to Muslim's response to him when he talks about, you know, exactly what he's seeing and what's going on. It's actually a very astute observation.
Any outside powers that want to delegitimize Israel. And it doesn't matter how many Palestinians die because they're essentially expendable. And that seems to me particularly true in relationship to Iran. So it's completely in Iran's fundamental interest to foment this chaos that you described. It's not in the best interest of the Palestinians in anything like the medium to long run, but it doesn't matter as long as the trouble keeps occurring. It's hard on Israel. It's hard on the United States. It helps Iran maintain its iron grip. It obviously seems to me obvious that many people in the Arab world are waking up to that, have woken up to that. I think that's why the Abraham Accords have more or less held through this, because there are powerful forces allied against Iran, most fundamentally, but it's in their best interest to keep the misery in Palestine going as long as it possibly can. And my suspicions are that what happened on October 7th was command directly, please, feel free to disagree with me, but this is how it looks to me, is that the Iranians decided that it was time to stir the pot, and they produced this massacre, and they hoped they'd provoke Israel into exactly the sort of reaction that Israel is having, and that Israel would take the threat extraordinarily seriously and move in. And as their military victory mounted, public opinion would turn against them and it would fragment the Abraham Accords. I suspect that was their plan. What do you think about that? Is that in accordance with your understanding of the situation?
What an astute observation of what's going on. I mean, I think that Dr. Peterson's analysis of the geopolitical functioning of this portion of this particular issue is really remarkable. I don't know who he's been listening to or who he's watching or who he's talking to, but he really does understand the situation. And as you're going to find out, Mossab is going to agree. He's going to say, yeah, you're right. Watch what he says.
Absolutely. This is Iran's attempt to actually rearrange the region.
Right.
But I don't want to go too far. That also China and Russia have ambition of reshaping the world.
Yes.
Changing the world order.
Yes.
But we don't want to go too far.
No, because God only knows how that's going to turn out.
And by the way, I will just tell you, when you talk about China and Russia coming in, we know China's going to become somewhat inconsequential, but Russia's not. Russia this is Ezekiel 38, right? We're already seeing Russia grow in prominence. Their position in Libya and all over the place. This is a very, very important aspect to not forget. Let's listen to the rest of what he says here.
It's basically Iran, Russia, China. They made it very clear that they don't want the United States monopoly over power. They want to change the world order.
Yeah.
Putin understands, he understands completely what it really meant for Hamas to go and ethnically cleanse 20 Jewish communities. And it was not coincidental right after the Ukraine-Russian war, where all the attention was at Europe. And we saw after what happened in Gaza, nobody talked about Ukraine.
Right.
When you bring the three major religions and make them clash somehow. Hamas was the trigger. Probably, I doubt that Hamas understand the KGB and Putin's play, but they are part of it.
Yeah, and this is funny. They don't understand the reality of it. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of other teaching that's contributing to this in Islam that's feeding into the very sophisticated set of tools that are going into how Russia is manipulating this, okay? Now, if you don't believe me, I'm going to play a video for you right now at this point because I think it'll be a really eye-opening place to play this video of the Grand Mufti of Egypt. Actually, he's the former Grand Mufti of Egypt. Listen to what he says. Listen to how he refers to all of this. The translation that they put down here is really good. I don't need to translate it for you because it's actually a remarkable translation. Matter of fact, all these translations are very good translations. I might stop for a second and expound upon a phrase that maybe he's saying, but they're all very good translations. And listen to what he actually says here, because what he says here is just it's heavy. Like it's crazy what he actually says. It shouldn't shock anybody when you hear some of this stuff. The problem is most people are shocked because they don't know what the common teaching is. Okay, so let's take a listen to this. By the way, this is the former Grand Mufti of Egypt. Okay, very interesting, and this is him talking about the destruction of Israel, which is going to lead to a battle where Muslims defeat the United States and Russia. This is not, you can't make this stuff up, okay? Watch what the Grand Mufti says here. This is interesting.
زوال الكيان الصهيوني لا نعرف ما الذي يحدث بعده. اليهود وإسرائيل والكيان الصهيوني لا يساوي عند الله وعند الناس جناح بعوضة.
Yahudi, Israeli, and he goes on, he says, basically, they're not even worth the wing of a mosquito. The way it's actually translated, not worth the wing of a bug. That shows you how much hatred they have in their heart for Jews. Let's continue to listen.
تخيل معي تخيل سياسي أن إسرائيل زالت، فما الذي سيكون؟ تدخل أمريكا فوراً. إياك أنت فاكر إن إسرائيل دي لما هنرميها في البحر
Irmiya Fabahr in Arabic, he's like, throw them away in the ocean like trash. That's what he's talking about with Israel. And the way he's talking about it is like when that time comes, when we throw Israel away like garbage in the like garbage in the sea. That's what he's saying. It's heavy language in Arabic. I wish you could understand Arabic to understand how heavy this is.
خلاص خلصت الحكاية. تدخل أمريكا فوق. وفي الحديث إنكم تقاتلون الروم.
He's quoting the
الروم
Quran.
اللي هم الأمريكان دول. طب وإذا دخلت أمريكا خلاص إسرائيل خلصت. هيحصل إيه؟ تدخل روسيا فورا.
He's bringing in Russia. Russia's going to move in.
وروسيا دول اللي هم مين؟ اللي هم يأجوج ومأجوج.
You may have heard a word that you recognize, Gog wa Magog. He has to have gotten this from partially reading the Bible, but he's referring to Russia as being Gog Magog. Now remember, Gog is presumably the leader of Russia from the region of Magog. This stuff is like, you can't make this stuff up. This is the former Grand Mufti of Egypt.
قبائل في أرمينيا موجودة ومعروفة وعارفينها وكل حاجة معروفة وموجودة مكتوبة.
معروف وفي مكتوب, meaning it's known all over in the books. The books teach us about this. He's referring to the holy books related to the Quran, and potentially what he may be referring to directly some of the Bible books. But it's interesting how he's saying this. Listen to what he says here. This is where it gets really powerful, and I'm not even going to interrupt him. Powerful in that it shows you how deceived people are. Listen to this.
فتخيل أن الأمريكان والروس دخلوا لك هنا هتعمل إيه؟ هتقاتله أرضك بلدي. ولذلك فهذا أمر يحتاج إلى تدخل إلهي مباشر. فأنبأنا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن التدخل سيحدث وأن عيسى ابن مريم سينزل.
Isa ibn Maryam. This is Jesus, son of Mary, is what he's saying. Like he's going to descend. That's what he's saying. He's going to descend, meaning he's going to come back.
فيقضي على يأجوج ومأجوج دول وينتصر المسلمون على الروم بس بتدخل إلهي بقى.
So, as you can see, eventually he's showing a scenario where even Jesus himself is going to help the Muslims kill everybody. Get rid of them all. The Americans, the Russians, the Jews are already dead. That's the way that he's talking. By the way, just so that you know, guys, in Islam, there is a culture of death. There's a culture of rape. There's a culture of exploitation. This is a normal part of what's going on here. Listen to what he says about his own experience. Listen to him talking about the fact that he himself was actually raped. This is such a sad thing to see. Listen to what he says here.
In a culture that would kill the rapist, but also they would kill the rape victim. So I never told anybody about that story. I never got any support. And
How old were you?
I was 5 or 6 years old when that happened. Now, I had to heal on my own, and it was a hell of a journey in a society that did not have mercy, that they preferred that I would disappear so I don't bring shame on them.
Right.
And I witnessed so many women being killed after being raped, that the father would prefer to kill his daughter to bury the shame with her, not to have to face the society that his daughter was raped. What type of mentality is this? What type of religion is this? And this is not just a culture. Okay.
Does it reflect on his inability to protect her? Is that the source of the
No,
shame?
it's his status.
It's his status.
It's
yeah.
his, the father of, he could not protect his daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now maybe the daughter is pregnant. This was before abortion, etc. Okay, the daughter is pregnant. What is he going to do with the child? No, he prefers to kill the daughter. He does not want to go even to the degree that his grandchild is a result of a rape incident. So, and from the 7th century in Islam, or in Arabia, they killed infants. So when I say sacrificing children, this is not coincidental. It's rooted in that culture.
And guys, look, this has happened in ancient Bible days. The devil does the same thing. He encapsulates the hearts of wicked people, and he creates a culture of sex. He creates a culture of wicked, lust, adulterous relationships that end up leading to the sacrifice of babies. This is nothing new under the sun. Same tactic, same tools, same type of wickedness. The Bible shows us this pattern again and again and again and again and again. Folks, this is happening all over the place. Listen to what he says about destruction. Listen to the view that he has concerning Palestinians and the destruction of the Jewish state. He's going to go as far as to tell you right now that Palestine itself depends on the destruction of the Jewish state. It's going to come out of his mouth. Let me play this for you right now.
There is no other way. Only the truth can set people free. Only the truth. The same thing with Palestine. It totally depends on the destruction of Israel in order for us to see what Palestine is. And the manifestation of Palestine requires the destruction of Israel. Same thing with the Islamic State. It requires the destruction of civilization, all civilizations combined, in order to achieve this global state called Khilafah. But we don't know how it is going to look like then. So we have first to die for them to live, then they can prove themselves. It's, if there is anything that defines madness, this is madness.
So I want to skip forward to what he talks about, or what he says when he talks about Jewish mothers and what Jews mean to him because of what they've done for him. This is a young Palestinian boy who was greatly affected by the kindness of the Jewish people. Let me fast forward to that point because it's heavy to listen to him say this, okay? This is all very eye-opening stuff. There's a lot to be said here. And look, some of the most eye-opening stuff we haven't even played yet. I'm going to play some of these videos that are going to blow your mind when you see this. And this is where we start to bring in the discussion of the love of God, because that's really where all of this needs to go, right? But look at what he says. This is mind-boggling.
It's a lot longer, a lot deeper.
Right here.
Many of the Jewish mothers throughout this journey, they took me in. You know, a country, a nation that really gave me so much support. I'm not talking about financial support as much as like sincere concern for my well-being. I've been to hundreds of Jewish families, Shabbat dinners. I have adopted nephews, Jewish nephews, that they're fighting in Gaza today. So in the face of such a situation, how can I abandon the Jewish people? Those are my people right now. And the Arabs also, the Arab children, I see myself, this is me. And I see how the predators, the pro-Palestine and the Hamas billionaires and the other criminals taking advantage of the situation.
So they're calling them criminals, taking advantage of the situation. And this is not like some guy who's just observing from the outside. Folks, this is the son of the founder of Hamas and one of the founders of Islamic Brotherhood. Look, I can't get any deeper than that. Look what he says about his father and his father's position as the founder, okay? We'll fast forward to this because this is a very, very important fact, because this is not coming from some, brainwashed kid who knows nothing about the inside. He came from this place, okay? So this is him talking about his father's position.
What position exactly did your father play or hold?
So
listen to this.
So basically, my father's position, of course, is changing because of internal elections, and his status would never be revealed to the public, not even to Hamas members, because the voting for his status would be only limited to the Hamas leadership. At that time, I think he was from he maintained throughout his career with Hamas top leadership in the Hamas Shura Council, plus a huge chance that he's one of the founders of Hamas, but he never revealed that. I knew this from other Hamas leaders, but he would never reveal that information to me.
Okay. Okay. So,
They usually reveal this information after his death. So we're talking about he's not only a leader of the movement, he's also the spiritual leader of the movement. Today, he could be the spiritual father of the movement. This is his significance. So not just logistical.
Okay.
Of course, after my story came out, his status in the movement was shaken.
right.
But somehow they wanted to give him as much support as they could.
That's how integral of a part his father is in Islamic Brotherhood and Hamas. Matter of fact, his father disowned him, and they've always had a close relationship. It's amazing the dedication that this guy has regarding all of this stuff. Now, there's two more segments of this video that I want you to watch. The first one is him talking about the relationship between Hamas and Iran. Let me play that for you.
Relationship between Hamas and Iran.
It's a very weird and awkward relationship because Shia and Sunni, they hate each other. And so there's a bloody history between both sects. But it's in Iran's interest to destabilize the region. And they find in Hamas a device. They give Hamas billions of dollars, but they...
Why do you think the Americans, especially the Democrats, why do you think they can't see this?
Because everybody's after their interest. Like, for example, right now, we have Iran's full attack on Israel. Ballistic missiles, etc. Okay, we downed many of those, and the United States helped the UK, other NATO countries. This is
Other
amazing.
Arab states.
Okay, this is great. But are we supposed to be a defense? Is this the best we could do? That we just stand at defense, the superpower? I would destroy the Iranian nuclear program immediately. This is what I called from day one. I said the most adequate response to October 7 is the destruction of Iran's nuclear program. You cannot give a Muslim country a nuclear power. It was a big mistake to let Pakistan to become a nuclear power.
He's very astute, very educated perspective. And I agree with him. I think the most significant thing that could be done by Israel is to destroy any bit of any type of nuclear program that Iran has. It's such a great idea. The problem is that what they're running into with the international community and the issues that they're going to be facing there. But he's very astute. His idea of that needing to happen is very, very, very good. Now, I want to do this kind of like a final portion of this, and then you're going to be blown away with some of the other videos I play for you. I mean, it's like mind-boggling, right? But let me play this portion where he gets asked about his view on the protests going on campus, right? Because it's also another great answer, very eye-opening, and it sort of makes you want, it sort of makes you want to make these college students listen, okay? This is just really, really important stuff that he's saying here. So let's play that for you, okay?
That's going to be how it is. I would like you to tell me what you think about what's happening on the streets in Western cities, but most specifically on university campuses with regards to the pro-Hamas movements that seem to be everywhere. And if you were speaking with a group of students who are acolytes of the victim-victimizer narrative and portraying their moral superiority by adopting the identity of allies of Hamas, it's like, what do you have to say about that?
Listen to what he says.
Again, it's not one phenomenon. It's many with different motives are coming to claim to be a pro-Palestine. It's not only a pro-Hamas. Hamas is actually igniting the bloodlust in many of the demonstrators. So when Hamas scores and shed blood, this gives them the pleasure of inflicting pain on their opponent. They say, oh, they deserved it. Because they are the Zionists, they're the colonizers, they're the occupiers, they are the bankers. They are the ones who control the economy. Those are the ones we are in debt to. So so many people come with a different motive, and this is just the hatred against the successful minority. This is the curse when you are a successful minority, that many people are going to come after you, especially if you are down or if you are wounded, that they will come and try to kick you while you're down. So many forces that they are, as we discussed at the beginning, that they are opposing forces, but somehow they got united in a very disgusting way. That shows you the moral decay of such groups. And I'm not talking only about students. There are historians, there are intellectuals, there are lawyers who bought into the BDS or the pro-Palestine propaganda, which is basically that Israel is an apartheid state, that Israel has been, or the Zionists been ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people. If the Palestinians had a Palestinian state, we would have not been in this situation. Hamas is a resistant group. So, and everybody project their hatred based on their intelligence and based on their ability to express that. So some intellectuals, they can represent their hatred, but in a deceptive way that does not show hatred, just like show...
it's always allyship for the victim, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's...
Really, really good. I mean, what he's saying here is insightful, and it's absolutely true. Let me play a video for you that I have played for you guys on multiple occasions. This is, again, one of the leaders of Hamas. And what he is, in essence, going to explain is that he has literally zero interest in becoming a dual state solution. He wants a Palestinian state that involves the elimination of all Jews. He's going to make that very clear here. I think it's worthwhile paying attention to, because when people say things like this, they mean those things. So pay attention to what he says. It's very eye-opening, okay? Let's watch this really quickly.
إنه هذا المعركة 7 أكتوبر فتحت أفق لموضوع الرؤية السياسية، وهنا يعودون إلى بضاعتهم القديمة حل الدولتين. وهنا أقول مسألتين في حل الدولتين. المسألة الأولى، نحن لا نقبل حل الدولتين. هذا مصطلح مرفوض، لأنه معناه أنك أنت لك دولة موعودة، ومطلوب منك أيضا تعترف بالدولة الأخرى اللي هي الكيان الصهيوني، تعترف بشرعيته. فهذه مرفوضة. نحن نطلب التحرر، تخلص من الاحتلال، ونريد استقلالنا ودولتنا. أنا غير هذا عدوي، أنا غير معني به. أنا
دولتنا اللي هي أي دولة
فلسطينية.
أي دولة فلسطينية.
طبعا إحنا بالنسبة لموقف حماس وموقف الشعب الفلسطيني في أغلبيته العظمى، خاصة بعد 7 أكتوبر، أظن تجدد الحلم والأمل. فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر، من الشمال إلى الجنوب. وهذا حتى كما قلت لك أصبح شعار في الولايات المتحدة وفي العواصم الغربية وعند الجمهور الغربي الأمريكي والغربي.
He's paying, notice what he's talking about. He's saying that now the students are helping their cause. You get that? I want to eliminate a whole race of people. And the American students are helping me do that.
إنه الشعب فلسطين حرة من النهر إلى البحر. هذه شعارات الطلاب الأمريكان وفي العواصم الأوروبية كذلك. مشروعنا الفلسطيني اللي عليه شبه إجماع وطني فلسطيني، حتى اللي عنده رأي مضطر أن يقوله بسبب
this kind of stuff they're not playing around with, okay? And we all know that everybody eventually gets affected when they tolerate this stuff. Look at this. Here's another interview. This one is it's just unfathomable. This is in the UK, by the way. And one of the guys speaking here, he's just a straight out criminal. But look at what this means. This will help you understand this here. Okay, here it is.
And how's the campaign to move Britain over to Sharia law coming along?
Well, this is in the hands of God. We do our best to propagate Islam. Well, of course it is. I think many people will see that democracy and freedom is no good for the British, no good for Afghanistan, and in fact, we need an alternative. Unlike man-made law, the Sharia is not something which gives you a right today to take it away tomorrow. It's good in all times and places.
Siri, to make this an issue of freedom and democracy is absurd. Anjem, you haven't had a hair on your body touched by this government or this country. You haven't spent a day in prison. You haven't suffered one bit for your views. You're allowed to sit here right now because of freedom and democracy. In your so-called caliphate, you'd have me killed, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you have me? Am I an apostate that deserves death?
Under your caliphate, he would be executable, would he?
He would be judged by an Islamic judge, and then after that...
There you have it, guys. See? He wants Sharia law. He says that democracy has no business in the UK. And he made it very clear, yeah, you're going to die because you oppose Islam. That's the idea. By the way, this is in Europe. This is in the UK. And this was from a few years ago. And the video that I'm about to play for you now was from probably around 6 or 7 years ago. As a matter of fact, 7 years ago to be specific, 2017. This is the Emiratis Minister of Foreign Affairs. Listen to the warning that he issues. Listen to this. It's staggering. It's staggering. Listen. Notice how he stops speaking Arabic immediately because he wants to speak English so that nobody will mistake what he says. Listen to this.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
It's everywhere. And this is the thing. It's like the American youth think that this is something that all the Middle East is unified in. And there's a lot of countries that are waking up to the reality of what is actually happening. They know it, they recognize it. They don't want Palestinians anywhere near them because they understand what it means. And this is not me going on some anti-Arab rant. I'm just simply telling the truth of what is actually happening. These individuals have brought a lot of this on themselves because they want to create this picture, right? But there's so many lies being told that nobody wants to really believe it. Let me play this video. This might be one of the most eye-opening of them all. This might be the video that is probably the most shocking. I don't have to translate it from Arabic because what he says in Arabic here is remarkably well translated into English. This is one of the bloggers in Saudi Arabia who's very popular. He's respected by everybody, including the royal family. Look at what he said almost immediately after October the 7th. Immediately after October the 7th, look at what he says. This is heavy. Watch this. It's powerful stuff. Look what he says. Pay very special attention. It's translated almost perfectly.
ما السعودية ما بقى شيء ما أعطتكم إياه حتى دولة أسست لكم دولة الملك فهد يوم ريغان يطلب منه تمويل زوار الكونترا قال له وحدة بوحدة أبي دولة لفلسطين قال له أبشر ووقع الخطاب دولة لفلسطين وعلم الملك فهد عرفات إنه حصلنا دولة فلسطينية هرب عرفات ما شافوه إلا بعد 10 سنين من هالكلام هذا هرب ما يبي دولة فلسطينية كلكم ما تبون دولة فلسطينية لأن أساسا ما لكم قضية ولا لكم دولة ولا لكم أرض هذه أرض إسرائيل.
By the way, just so you know, some of you might not have caught what he just said, but the king of Saudi Arabia arranged a deal with Ronald Reagan to actually create a Palestinian state, and Arafat said no. Okay? He's speaking in Arabic. And look at this. This is a Saudi Arabian man who's one of the most popular bloggers in the Southern Peninsula. Actually, all of the Arabian Peninsula, all over the Middle Eastern world. He's a very popular man. Look what he says. This land belongs to Israel. That's what he says. This land belongs to Israel. Look what he continues to say. This is heavy. It's eye-opening.
بالقرى وانتم شتات رومان ملفقين مغول وتركمان وشركس وأرمن وغجر، ما لكم حق بفلسطين. فلسطين هذه دولة إسرائيلية لبني إسرائيل، وبني إسرائيل لمعلوميتكم بني إسرائيل هذول عيال إسحاق، وحنا يا العرب عيال إسماعيل، وإسحاق وإسماعيل أخوين أبوهم إبراهيم عليه السلام، يعني هذول عيال عمنا. لكن أنتم منين جيتوا؟ أنتم مش دخلكم بالموضوع؟ أنتم يا الشتات يا الغجر يا المغول يا التركمان يا الشركس يا الرومان يا بقايا الشعوب، ايش دخلكم بالموضوع؟ ايش دخلكم بالسالفه؟ ايش دخلكم بيننا؟ هذا بني اسرائيل على ارضهم، ما لكم ارض انتم ولا لكم قضيه يا جماعه، انتم ادوختونا واشغلتونا. والاقصى الاقصى لمعلوميتكم ما عندكم اقصى، ما في شيء اسمه اقصى، في شيء اسمه القدس. المسجد الاقصى اللي ورد ذكره هو بالجعرانه 29 كيلو على الطائف، وكان المسجدين المسجد الاقصى والمسجد الادنى. المسجد الأقصى حقكم بناه الشام عام 72 هجري، كيف يسرى محمد له وهو مبني عام 72 للهجرة؟
By the way, he's bringing up a major issue within Islam with respect to the location problem. I am going to put a video up right here, a link to a video that I did with an amazing interview that speaks about how there wasn't even a Quran during the time of Muhammad. And Muhammad isn't even the person that the Quran says. I got the link up here. It's an astounding, eye-opening video. Astounding. Let's continue on.
يعني بعد وفاة محمد ب60 سنة. تضحكون على مين انتم؟ تضحكون على مين؟ الفلسطيني. انت ما انت عربي. ولا لك ارض ولا لك قضية. الارض ارض اسرائيل. والقضية قضية إسرائيل معكم. كان إسحاق شامير ورابين وشارون وجولدا مائير والثاني والله ما أدري شو اسمه، هذول كانوا أبطال، تدري ولا لا؟ لكن نتنياهو جبان، لا نتنياهو ما حرككم، ما أدري وش يبي بالأسلحة مكدسها عنده.
By the way, he's calling Netanyahu a coward because he says that Netanyahu should have just eliminated the Palestinians when they did this. I mean, that's how heavy this guy is. Like, it's serious what he's saying here. Listen to this.
يا آدمي يا نتنياهو أحرق هالعصابات هذه وهالشتات وهالملفقين وريح نفسك وريح العالم منهم وريحنا احنا منهم. ليش مخليهم؟ ليش فتح لهم الحدود؟
He says, ريحنا منهم, meaning relieve us of these people. This is Saudi Arabia. He's saying, relieve us of these people. That's in Arabic. ريحنا منهم. By the way, you're not seeing that translated here, but that's what it means. ريحنا منهم. Relieve us of them.
يهاجرون. نراحوا للأردن سووا ويلول الأسود، ونراحوا للكويت انهبوه يوم صدام احتله، انهبوه يلبسون لبس الجيش العراقي وينهبوه. الخسة والنذالة والحقارة ما يتركونها، هذه تربيتهم وهذا دمهم وهذا عرقهم. ليش ما تريح العالم منهم يا نتنياهو إذا أنت رجال وبطل؟ ها؟ الله يلعنكم ويلعن حتى نتنياهو اللي ما خلصنا منكم. لأن نتنياهو تارك لكم الحبل على الغارب. والمفروض نتنياهو هو اللي يأدبكم وهو اللي يخلص العالم من شروركم. أنتم شر في أي دولة تحطون فيها يا الفلسطينيين. شر منزل ولا بكم رجل. أنا مستعد أنام عند يهودي ولا أنام عند فلسطيني. أنا مستعد أقلط يهودي في بيتي وأغديه وأوكله وأشربه ورقده ولا أدخل فلسطيني في بيتي. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
When he's talking about not having a Palestinian in his house, the sentiment that you won't pick up from the translation, but you will pick up if you understand Arabic is, I won't let a Palestinian in my house, not because I hate them or they're terrible, although there's some of that is being implied in what he's saying. He's saying, I won't let a Palestinian in my house because I know they'll take me of everything. The way that the mindset of these people are, they'll just come in and destroy whatever that is being given to them. That's what he's actually saying. It's folks, it's crazy. Now, I want to end with something that I think would be a very, very beautiful way to end this video. Look, the answer to all of this is Christ. Look, Jesus gives us the answer to every single thing that we're lacking. Look, every single issue we're dealing with, every single concern, every single problem that we see around the world, we find our solution in Christ. It's that simple, folks. And I just thought that I would end this by playing a video of a man by the name of Bishop Marmari Emmanuel. Now, if you don't know who he is I just think he's an extraordinary man. He is Armenian. He is a pastor or a bishop. He's a Christian man. And a few weeks ago, he was stabbed by a Muslim man while he was teaching in his church. It's interesting because the attempt that was made on his life, God made it fail because the knife folded on this man's fingers, the attempted murderer, folded on his fingers and cut his fingers off. But Bishop Mari lost his eye as a result of this. So look what he says regarding the loss of his eye. And I think this would just be a great thing to end. By the way, if you speak Arabic and you're a Christian, you're going to love the way he words this because it is beautifully articulate Arabic that he speaks, speaking the beautiful words of the Lord. I would encourage you to just close your eyes and listen to what he has to say. Many of you are not going to be able to close your eyes because you're going to have to look at the translation. But what he says is remarkable. What he says is absolutely beautiful. Listen to what he says here. It's extraordinary. And then we'll end on this. Watch this. You don't want to miss this video. Watch what he says.
وأقول في هذا الحادث الذي حصل قبل أسبوعين هذه العين فقدت. أطلب من الرب يسوع المسيح أن يقبل هذه العين كعربون محبة وعربون تضحية، ولكني أخجل أن أقول أنا أضحي للرب. ما صنعه الرب على خشبة الصليب لا يوجد إنسان على الإطلاق أن يوفي ما صنعه الرب يسوع المسيح، ولكن أصلي يا يسوعي الغالي الحبيب أن تقبل بنعمتك وبمحبتك أن تقبل هذه العين عربون حب لكل إنسان مسلم أينما تواجد. أنا أعطيك عيني يا حبيبي المسلم، إن لا تبصر فأنا أكون العين لك، ولتكون هذه العين كما نقولها في اللهجة الدارجة العراقية حبيبي أنت، هاي العين تروح لك فدوة، هاي العين تروح لك فدوة حبيبي، هاي العين تروح لك فدوة يا الغالي.
It's beautiful. It's just a remarkable thing. What happens when the Spirit of God enters into the soul, into the heart of a man? What happens when things like that change? Folks, listen to me. Our hope is in Christ. This is where we find the solution. We find the answer to him. And when we're armed with the knowledge of what's really going on and we give these things to the Lord God in heaven, it literally changes everything because God is good. Let's keep our eyes on him. He's the only hope for this world. God bless you.